In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace your wheel bearing hub on your Honda CR-V. It's located behind your rear wheel. Using a 19mm socket, we're going to remove our lug nuts. Make sure you have a hand on it. Take off that last one. Using a 14mm long socket, you're going to take off your caliper. By taking out these two bolts. Make sure you don't stretch your hose in any way. And you can hang up your caliper away from where you're working. You're going to use an impact driver with a Phillips head and remove your screws for your rotor. And then you can remove your rotor. We're going to unlock the axle nut just by taking out that peen. Sometimes you can just get a little punch in there and just make sure it's not going to be a problem taking it off. Using a 32mm axle nut socket, we're going to remove the axle nut. Just make sure your axle is free before doing anything else. If it's not free, you can take a punch and a rubber mallet and just free it up. Using a 10mm socket, we're going to take out our bolt for our speed sensor. You're going to need a flathead screwdriver. Slide underneath, twist the sensor a little bit if it does twist. And you're going to gently pry up by twisting the screwdriver back and forth. It may take a little effort to get it out of there, but try your best. Okay, using a 12mm socket, long socket, I'm going to loosen up these two bolts for the brake hose bracket and take it out. Make sure you hold the other end. All right, so now this is more free. We're going to move this aside a little bit more, get it out of our way. All right, so now that you've removed that bracket, you can push your caliper in the far back, rest it on the axle. You just need it out of your way, and make sure you don't kink that brake hose. If you want, you can remove your speed sensor also and put that aside if it's in your way. Put that over here, and then you'll have more room for that bracket. All right, so we're gonna take our shoes off. You can use some wire cutters, get the springs off. Or you can use a spring tool. Sometimes the wire cutters are easier. Okay, so you're going to disconnect your spring there. You're going to spread your shoes apart. You're just going to separate them out a little bit. Now we're going to take the spring clip off. All right, so we're going to move our spring clip down. And I have a little tech tip. You can use some locking pliers and squeeze that. Like that. Let that sit. Take some needle nose. If you can't spin that on your own, do that and take that off. All right, after you take that off, you can take off the shoe and make sure you take your adjuster with you. All right, now you can take your spring clip pin out. Might be some rust. All right, so you're gonna take a flathead screwdriver and spin it out like the other side. Squeeze it. Get your needle nose in there and turn the pin. And then you can take that off. And then you can take the rest of the shoe down. At this point, we're going to have to disconnect this. So just make sure everything's secure and not going to fall apart on you. All right, so now we're going to take our pin out. It will fit, you just have to get the rust off. And push it low. Push it down, because the knuckle is in the way. All right, so we're gonna use some wire cutters. Take this emergency brake cable off. All right, so if you use your wire cutters, you want to use the bracket as leverage and not cut the cable, but use the cutters to pry it out from where it lives. Like that. All right, using a 10mm ratchet wrench, I'm going to take out this bottom bolt for our emergency brake cable. And then for the top bolt, we're going to use a short 10mm socket with a 1/4" ratchet. All right, and then you're going to take that bolt out. All right, so now we're just going to give it a tap. And take our emergency brake cable off our backing brace. Put that off to the side. So let's mark this so that it's an adjusting bolt. So you want to mark it to make sure you put it back the same way you took it out. Otherwise the alignment is going to be way off. All right, using a 17mm socket, I'm going to take off this nut. All right, so now we're going to take this off. Make sure our mark is on there. And we're going to take this bolt out. Using a 17mm socket, we're going to take out this bolt. Okay, once again, using a 17mm socket, I'm going to take out this top bolt for our upper control arm. Okay, let's make sure you got a good hand on that before removing that bolt. Okay, so now we're going to remove our axle from the knuckle and the trailing arm. I'm going to use a pry bar. Make sure you have a good hand on it. And make sure your axle is free from the knuckle. You don't want to pull that out the other way. There we go. Just let that rest there. And there you go. Okay, using a 14mm socket, we're going to take out this nut to take the backing plate off. Now we're going to use a 22mm for this larger nut to take off the backing plate. Using a 14mm socket, we're going to take out this nut. All right, so we're taking the backing plate off. And with us, we have a ton of rust going on here. So what I was doing is putting the nut back on and then tapping down on the nut on each of the 3 studs. And it did get moving. I used a lot of penetrating oil, and now we're towards the end. All right, so we took the backing plate off, or pushed it down so we could get some supports inside here to be able to hammer this out. So I'm using a socket the size of the hub so I can knock it out. So now we've separated those two. Okay, using some snap ring pliers, we're going to remove our snap ring. All right, so we're going to press the rest of the bearing out of our knuckle using a press. So I've set it up so that there's a socket in here and it's going to press it out of it. All right, so this side has a magnet for the ABS sensor, and this side doesn't. You want to make sure that this side is going down when you're pressing it in to the knuckle. Before pressing it in, make sure you're evenly started, and we're going to press it in. All right, so once you feel some resistance, go a little bit more and it should be flush with where it needs to be. All right, so now we're going to put our snap ring in. Make sure it's seated in there. There's a little groove that it lives where it lives. All right, so now we're going to put our backing plate on. Two small studs and one large one. I'm going to use a hammer and just tap them in, the studs, because they're falling out of my backing plate. So we put our backing plate on. Now we're going to make sure our studs are all in, get our nut started. All right, so we're going to put our backing plate nuts on and tighten these up. All right, so we're going to press our bearing and hub together. We're using a socket that is the same size as the inside of the bearing to support that. And we're going to press in. Just make sure it's going in evenly. All right, you're going to feel some resistance. Go a little bit more. And you should be good. All right, looking good. So let's get it over to the vehicle. All right, so now we're going to put our knuckle back on and feed it through the axle. All right, so as you're getting the axle in, you're going to make sure you get it lined up with your trailer arm. You can use a rubber mallet if needed. All right, so once you got everything lined up, you can start your bolt. All right, so you're gonna get that bolt started. All right, so now we can get that bolt started on this side. And put our adjusting cam bolt nut on. Make sure you line it up with your markings. There we go. Make sure it sits in there right, and then just get that started as well. All right, so I'm going to snug these up, these two bolts in the bottom. I'm using a pull jack so I can push up the knuckle so it's more like ride height. I'm going to snug this up. And then we're going to snug up the other side. We'll be torquing this after. All right, so we're going to snug this side up as well. All right, so now we're going to attach our upper control arm by pulling down on it and getting your bolt in there. You can also use a pry bar if needed. All right, we're going to snug up our upper control arm. Okay, we're going to torque our top bolt, our upper control arm bolt, to 69 foot-pounds. All right, and now we're going to torque this nut to 42 foot-pounds. All right, and now we're going to torque this bolt to 43 foot-pounds. All right, so now we can lower this down. It's important that you torque all of these at ride height. All right, let's install our axle nut. All right, so now you're going to pull your emergency brake cable through and line up your bracket, and now we can put our bolts in. The head goes on this side, and it threads into this welded nut. All right, I'm going to snug it up as best I can. All right, so let's tighten up this bolt. And now we'll tighten up the one on the bottom as well. Because I can't really get the socket in there very well. Okay, so we're going to put our cable on. We're going to push the cable up with this bracket and feed our cable in. All right, so let's clean up our surfaces where the shoes need to move. Put some grease on them. I'm just going to clean that up a little bit. Let it air dry. And I'll put a little silicone paste on the raised spots. All right, so we're going to attach our shoe. We have our locking pliers on our clip, and I'm going to put the pin through the back. And then I'm going to put my clip on. All right, so once you get your clip in there, you can turn that and release your pliers. All right, now we're going to do our other side. And slide your clip in. All right, so we're going to insert our bracket here. It just lays between the two. It's like sandwiched in there. And then you take your spring on the top and you're going to reach it over to this hole here. All right, so now we're going to put our little spring here and hook it into this hole. All right. All right, so now we're going to put our adjuster in. I'm going to place it in there. So it's like that, and now we're going to put our spring in the bottom. I'm going to put it in that elongated hole and also on the other elongated hole. All right, I'm going to put some anti-seize. All right, so now we're going to put our rotor on. Make sure that your screws are lined up. Put your screws in to hold your rotor on. Now you can spin your rotor to where your adjuster is and adjust the e-brake. You're going to use a skinny flathead screwdriver. And you're going to adjust your adjuster. All right, so when you spin it, you should hear a little bit of drag. If you can't spin your rotor, You've gone way too far, so back it off. All right, so now I'm going to take my bungee cord off for the caliper in case it fell. And we're going to take it out from where it lives and put it on the rotor. Do not bend your hose too much or kink it. All right, so making sure your brake hose bracket lines up and your caliper lines up with the bolt holes. All right, so let's get our bolt started for our caliper. And the one on the bottom. Using a 14 millimeter, we're going to torque this to 41 foot-pounds. And the same with the other bolt. All right, so let's put our brake hose bracket back. Attach it with our bolts. All right, let's tighten these up. You're just going to snug them up. You're going to move on to this bracket here with your control arm, and you're going to push it in. So now we're going to put our speed sensor in our hub. Make sure your bolt hole is facing to the interior of the car. Start your bolt. And you're going to tighten it to about wrist tight. That's good. We're going to torque our axle nut using a 32 millimeter socket to 135 foot-pounds. First, we're going to put a long pry bar that's pressing against the ground and in between two lug nut studs. That way it holds it from spinning. All right, so now we got to peen it over, meaning we're just going to put a dent in it so it locks it into the stud. Just use a cold chisel to do that, like that. All right, we're going to reinstall our wheel. Get our lug nut started by hand. Anytime you do any sort of suspension, you're going to want to get your alignment checked at your local shop. And now we're going to snug them up in a star-like pattern. I'm going to turn this down. All right, we're going to torque our wheel to 80 foot-pounds. We're going to do that in a star-like pattern. And I like to go around one more time.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.